Lecce is the easternmost province of Italy and it occupies the southern tip of Apulia. Today it constitutes, with part of the provinces of Brindisi and Taranto, the geographical region of Salento, once called Terra d'Otranto. The beaches in the province, today destination for Italian and foreign tourists, are characterized by fine gold sand, while high and steep cliffs dropping sheer to the sea allow to admire the breathtaking panorama and to enjoy the perfumes of the Mediterranean vegetation. The dry stone walls, the pajare, the farmhouses color the landscape of the countryside and exalt the specific nature of the territory, where the stone has always been considered the main constructive element. The Palace of Celestini is situated in Lecce, in the very central Via Umberto I. It is considered as the most important monument of the Baroque architecture in Terra d'Otranto and one of the most refined architectural ornaments of the city. The palace is today the provincial government and prefectural headquarters, and it is named after the Order of Celestines, since in the past it was their residence for 3 centuries. The facade is extremely refined in all parts. The windows are enriched with elaborate frames and a lot of ornaments in the Baroque style, representing floral elements, fruits and other decorative elements. The decorations of the windows of the second order are more evident, especially in their upper part. They give an effect of gracefulness and lightness, which soften the solemnity of the rigid geometric shapes of the wall structure. Noteworthy is also the main entrance door, placed in the middle of the building. Its imposing structure is in accordance with the wall facade, which represents the most expressive symbol of the 17th century in Lecce. Once the entrance door passed, you enter inside the cloister, majestic in its geometric square shape. Of considerable artistic value is the small access linking the cloister of Celestini to the Santa Croce church. The double door is enclosed in a suggestive frame, with an elaborate pattern totally carved in stone. One of the most evocative rooms is that where the provincial council meets. It is characterized by a wooden coffered ceiling, enriched with various ornaments and the symbol of the province of Lecce. The coat of arms is also displayed behind the seat occupied by the presidency, and it represents a dolphin with a half moon in its mouth. The cabinet office of the prefect is furnished with precious period furniture, and it is lit by a luxury chandelier. The ceiling is richly frescoed with the allegories of the provinces of Lecce, Brindisi, Bari and Taranto, represented inside 4 big lunettes. The so-called coat of arms room contains the coat of arms of all the municipalities in Salento. It acts as an antechamber to a group of rooms and living rooms, sumptuously decorated in all their parts, among which stand out with its particular beauty the red parlour and the green parlour, some of the most valuable rooms of the whole building. Here the presence of upholstery, stuccos, marbles, chandeliers of any kind gives elegance to the whole environment. Very characteristic is the dining room, furnished with antique and austere furniture, precious as the paintings which decorate its walls, some of which given in permanent exhibition by the Museum Castromediano. Next to the dining room, there is also a billiard room, used for the leisure time of the palace's guests. One of the most important rooms of the whole palace of Celestini is the feast room, also called the Hall of Mirrors, because it is provided with elegant and precious crystal mirrors. This big living room hosted in the past historical and magnificent receptions, and the visits of illustrious figures such as Ferdinand IV, Joachim Murat, and King Ferdinand II. Palace Adorno, situated at a few meters from the Palace of Celestini, is another important historical building in the province of Lecce, perhaps among the most representative of the 16th century. The hallway is a diamond-shaped ashlar, and it has a beautiful luneted vault supported by columns, whose capitals are dotted with sophisticated drawings of acanthus leaves. The entrance to the staircase is reached by two fake rectangular columns, crowned with graceful capitals. Above there is a big rectangular frame, which contains the coat of arms of the Loffredo di Capua family. The dynasty is also celebrated in a niche containing the remains of a fresco, which represents the marriage in 1557 between Cicco Loffredo and Lucrezia di Capua. Palace Adorno is placed in the middle of what was once the Giudecca, the Jewish quarter of Lecce. The real synagogue rose not far, but in 1540 Charles V issued an edict after which it was demolished, and the Jewish pushed out of the city and of the reign, with the accusation of usury. This story is testified by a stone inscription, "That's not the house of God," which was found in the underground conduits, which collect and discharge waste waters. According to some theories, the inscription was placed in the waste waters as a sign of contempt. An anecdote makes even more precious Palace Adorno. Under the foundations, accessible from an internal steep stairway, a long and narrow underground river seems to exist. This is Idume, the first level of the groundwater, which for many centuries flows under the foundations of the buildings situated in the historical center of Lecce, and which rises to the surface along the coast in the direction of Torre Chianca. The museum Sigismondo Castromediano was founded in 1868, when the province of Terra appointed a specific research committee with the task of studying all the historical and artistic events of Salento. Sigismondo Castromediano was appointed to direct the museum, to which he gave his name. Initially, the museum was situated on the first floor of the former monastery of Celestini, but in 1979 it was transferred in its current location, and today it represents an important historical, archaeological and cultural pole for the whole territory. By going up to the first floor of the museum, there's a section dedicated to prehistory. Here you can find the famous Venuses of Parabita, bone female statues dating back to the Upper Paleolithic. After the area dedicated to prehistory, you can access to the Antiquarium, a circular environment where you can find some glass cases and the remains of ancient stone inscriptions. You can thus admire an extraordinary collection of vases and artifacts dating back to the Hellenic period, many of which depict scenes of battle, daily life and Hellenic mythology. On the same floor you can admire the interesting ceramics of the so-called Ignazia style, the third region of the ancient Apulia, mentioned by Pliny and Horace. On the ground floor, an elliptical path leads you to discover the ancient origins of Yapigi in Salento. Here you can find the archaeological finds that witness the contacts between the Aegean world and the Salento, dating back to the Mycenaean period until the Iron Age between the 10th and the 8th century before Christ. On the third floor in 1979, an art gallery was set up. It contains some paintings coming from the offices of the province, from the donation of Panarese in 1952, and from the collection of the Palmieri boarding school. Very important are the exhibitions of paintings of the Salento modern age. The Convitto Palmieri is considered an important cultural pole for the whole province of Lecce, thanks also to the numerous services it provides to the public, which branch off throughout all the environments of the building. The whole architectural complex of the Palmieri boarding school develops on three sides, close to the beautiful Giosuè Carducci Square, which has at its center the half-bust statue of the Tuscan poet. The facade of the boarding school is really sumptuous, in a Doric style that reminds us of the large Greek temples of the Magna Graecia, at least in its central section. The Palmieri boarding school was realized in 1273, together with the adjacent church of San Francesco della Scarpa, and originally it was a Franciscan convent. It was under the order of Jesuits that the boarding school assumed an important educational function by hosting different schools and educational institutions. It was only in 1865 that the boarding school was named after Giuseppe Palmieri, a well-known economist of Salento. The church of San Francesco della Scarpa, today deconsecrated and part of the Palmieri boarding school, was built in 1330 and it is situated in the heart of the historical center of Lecce. The history about its name is very interesting and it is linked to an ancient popular legend. It is said that in 1222 the believers asked Saint Francis of Assisi, direct to the Holy Land and guest in the city of Lecce, to leave a memory of his passage. The saint agreed by giving them a send-off. In the oratory, where according to the tradition the Saint of Assisi lived, there are many 18th century frescoes, restored in the last century by Pasquale Grassi, and representing various stages of the spiritual path of the sect. In 1874, the Salenti researcher Cosimo De Giorgi established inside the bell tower the meteorological observatory and then a surveillance center of various rainfall stations, set out in 1877. Currently, the church has a Greek cross plant with 2 orders of pilasters. It preserves only 5 of its 10 original altars. The most suggestive is the high altar, surmounted by the papier-mâché statue of Saint Joseph with the child Jesus, dating back to 1833. Among the altars already existing, there is one dedicated to Saint Francis of Assisi, situated on the right side of the transept and attributed to the sculptor Pasquale Simone. Villa Mellone is named after the powerful family of merchants who were the owners in the 19th century. The villa is situated in what was once the town of Rudie, on an ancient Roman street, which leads inside the Messapian city walls of the city of Lupie, the current Lecce. The facade is imposing and monumental, and on the upper floor it is softened by the presence of some trophies, with a vegetable decoration on the sides of the windows. Among the most fascinating environments of the whole noble building, there is what was once a gallery. Interesting from a decorative point of view is the big pavilion vault. At the corners of the vault, you can see winged subjects represented with big trophies, with a vegetable decoration and baskets of fruit. 4 couples of stylized sphinxes, placed in profile, dominate the central part of each wall, while in the upper part there are 2 medallions with female figures, intent on playing ball and dancing. Another room very interesting is that adjacent to the gallery. It is likewise extremely fascinating, and it has the same iconographic elements of the gallery, with few but important decorative variants. At a few kilometers from Vernole, there is the hamlet of Acaya, the ancient fortified village of Segine. It represents the most important example of a fortified town in Salento, which still perfectly preserves the signs of its glorious past. The ancient village of Acaya dates back to the medieval period, when it was granted as a feud to Gervaso della Acaya by Charles II of Anjou. Acaya is today known not only for the beauty of its ancient historical center, but above all for its imposing castle, defensive fortification for its people and the surrounding area. This mighty military fortress is one of the most innovative and better cared of the whole Kingdom of Naples. Charles V, desirous of having a great control over the Salento territory, decided to invest in the little village of Acaya to strengthen its dominant position. The external view of the manor displays its massive size, which, together with its bold shapes and finished tiles, made it a modern and impregnable building. At the two opposite corners, you can admire the imposing defensive towers with a traditional circular shape and elegant corbels. The northeastern tower, situated next to the castle entrance door, has the heraldic emblems of Acaya, even if damaged by the time, with underlying epigraphs. On the northwestern side, you can see a high spur well integrated in the body of the castle. Even more unusual is the triangular bastion, situated at the southeastern corner of the castle. The entrance hallway of the castle leads to the lower floor, where there were the warehouses called in the past kitchens. Here you can still find clearly visible many granary ditches used for the food conservation. On the opposite side there were the stables, transformed in the 19th century into a semi-underground mill. On the walls of what must have been a place of worship, the remains of different frescoes dating back to the late Byzantine period were found. Of particular artistic value and the best preserved is the fresco representing the Dormizio Viginis. On the upper floor there was the noble residence, divided into 7 rooms, among which the so-called Room of the Great Tower and the Square Room of the Bastion. One of the most beautiful rooms of the whole castle is the so-called Inagonal Room, situated on the northeastern side of the castle, in correspondence of the relevant tower.